The last words over the radio were haunting. How are we supposed to cross this? Then, eternal silence. The south face of Annapurna, the deadliest mountain on the planet, had claimed the legendary tiger, Park Young-seok, and his partners, Shin and Kang Ki-seok, forever. But why would a man, the first in history to summit all 14 8,000ers and reach both poles, step back into the abyss when he could have been enjoying a quiet life? This isn't a story about madness. It's about the price you pay for refusing to live an ordinary, modern life. It all started with one risky decision, all for a dream. Imagine putting the keys to your only apartment on the table, all for the slimmest chance of survival in the freezing wind. This is where the legend begins. It's the late 1980s. Seoul is thrumming with the energy of change. Construction cranes and neon signs everywhere. But all Park Young-seok sees are snow-capped peaks. He's young, ambitious, and a complete unknown. In a world where success is measured by job titles and a steady paycheck, Park chooses the vertical. He wants the Himalayas. But big mountains don't just demand iron will. They demand a huge amount of money. Mountaineering back then was a closed club. The gear weighed a ton, logistics cost a fortune, and climbing permits cost what an ordinary family might live on for years. Park knocks on every door. He pitches to corporations, showing them charts, maps, the fire in his eyes. The response? Silence. Sponsors see no profit in backing some unknown kid who plans to risk his life on the other side of the world. Each rejection hits harder than altitude sickness. Hope is fading with every passing day, and the climbing season is getting closer. Park knows time is running out. He looks at his life, his home, his young wife who believes in his dream, perhaps a little too much. He doesn't have wealthy parents or an inheritance. He has only one valuable thing: his home. Or more precisely, the deposit on their modest apartment, the one thing that guarantees a roof over his small family's heads. It's the foundation of their security, their only asset in an unstable world. A desperate battle rages in Park's mind. Common sense screams that this is insanity. To gamble the well-being of your loved ones for your own ambition is an act many would call selfish. But the call of the summit drowns out any voice of reason. Park makes a decision that sends a chill down your spine. He goes to the bank. The papers are signed. He mortgages their home. He's essentially pulling the foundation out from under his family and trading it for plane tickets and tents. Now, there's no turning back. If he returns with nothing, if the mountain rejects him or the unthinkable happens, his family will be on the street. The weight of responsibility on his shoulders is heavier than any backpack. He sets off on the expedition as a man who has bet everything he has. Every coin he received from mortgaging the walls of his home burns a hole in his pocket. Now, every step on the slope will demand an incredible effort, because he knows the true price of this ticket to the thin air. The bet has been placed, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Gravity at 7,000 meters knows no pity or compromise. Park Young-seok finds himself face to face with one of the most formidable walls on the planet, the southwest face of Everest. This isn't a tourist trail packed down by hundreds of boots. It's a vertical world of black rock and ice, where every ledge is exposed to the wind, and a single gust is all it takes to throw a person off. The year is 1991, and for a newcomer, choosing such a route borders on reckless. Experienced guides look at this slope with apprehension, but Park pushes upward, driven by an ambition that silences his instinct for self-preservation. The air here is so thin that every breath is a struggle. Park is pushing his limits, clinging to the icy crust, but the mountain decides to test his resolve in the cruelest way possible. At around 7,000 meters, the one thing every climber fears happens. The ground gives way beneath him. In an instant, he loses control, and the world turns upside down. Park is falling. He plummets down the sheer face, slamming against rock outcroppings and ice formations. He falls 150 meters, a distance equal to a 45-story skyscraper. In a situation like this, the chances of survival are close to zero. But then, something incredible happens. The fall stops. Park is lying on the slope, stunned, battered, but alive. He's saved by deep snow that cushioned the impact, and a stroke of luck that, in the mountains, they call a miracle. He slowly comes to his senses and looks up at where he just fell from, realizing the scale of what just happened. Most people, after an experience like that, would pack it in, call it quits, and forget about mountaineering forever, choosing a quiet life in the lowlands. For any normal person, this is a stop sign. But Park is wired differently. Instead of fear, what awakens in his mind is a cold fury, a thrill. He doesn't feel relief at having survived, but a surge of wild energy. This moment becomes his turning point. He understands that the mountains don't forgive weakness, but they respect audacity. Right there, on that snowy slope, brushing himself off after a fatal plunge, he forms the personal creed that will become his trademark. He looks at his trembling hands and utters the words that will define his destiny. If a tiger loses its wildness, it's no longer a tiger. Park doesn't back down. 2 years after that moment on Everest, he's standing at its base again. This time, he looks at the summit not as a dreamer, but as a man with a score to settle. This is no longer a sport, it's a personal showdown. On May 16, 1993, he digs his crampons into the final ridge. He stands at 8,848 meters. The entire world lies at his feet. In that moment, the fear of the past finally dissolves into the euphoria of victory. But the descent from the summit doesn't bring peace. It brings a new kind of hunger. Everest becomes just the first chapter in a book he plans to write for decades. Park looks out at the Himalayan horizon and sees not just beautiful peaks, but targets. A plan forms in his mind, one so audacious it terrifies even seasoned climbers, the 14 8,000ers program. He wants to collect the full set of the planet's highest peaks. It's a survival marathon, spread over years. In 1996, their sights shift to Annapurna. The very name makes even Everest veterans shudder. The mountain's statistics are brutal: avalanches, collapses, and unpredictable terrain. Until 2012, the death rate here hovered around 30%. Simply put, 1 in 3 people who attempted the summit never came back. This is because Annapurna is one of the most avalanche-prone 8,000ers in the world. The routes pass under hanging ice fields and through couloirs where the risk never diminishes, no matter your experience or technique. Park approaches Annapurna with the utmost seriousness. He chooses the classic route, avoiding any unnecessary risks, and the mountain, as if recognizing an equal, shows him mercy. On May 4, 1996, Annapurna greets him with silence and a clear sky. The climb goes unnervingly smoothly, with no drama, no falls, as if nature itself has given him a green light. During this period, Park operates like a general on a battlefield. He uses a tactic known as siege style. He surrounds the mountain with a chain of camps, kilometers of fixed ropes, and a support team. Park methodically works the slope, step by step, meter by meter. He learns to wait for the weather, manage logistics, and conserve his strength. He is now accumulating the very experience that transforms a talented rookie into a world-class professional. Every ice screw driven, every camp established, strengthens his confidence. He understands that mountains are hard work, and he's ready to do it better than anyone else. However, this accumulated experience and methodical approach don't become Park's final destination, but a launch pad for something unimaginable. The strategist of yesterday, who would wait for months for a weather window, suddenly transforms into a hurricane. Park descends from Annapurna and formulates a plan that leaves veteran climbers breathless. 5 8,000ers in a single year. In 1997, he goes to his sponsors with a challenge. He lays a map on the table, with routes that cross country borders and the laws of human physiology. In a world where it takes months to recover from a single trip to the death zone, the idea of storming summits back-to-back seems like pure fantasy. Experts look at the charts and see guaranteed exhaustion, but Park radiates such confidence that logic gives way. The sponsors see a man who has outgrown fear. They sign the checks, effectively funding the biggest adventure of the decade. The race begins, and Park pushes the pace to its absolute limit. The 97 season unfolds at a breakneck speed, with no pauses. First, Dhaulagiri. Park barely lingers on the summit. His mind is already in Pakistan. A flight, a change of gear, and he's in the Karakoram. This is where the real endurance test begins. Park ascends Gasherbrum 1, descends, and then, without letting his body recover, he immediately goes for Gasherbrum 2. It's a rare double, requiring extreme effort. In the fall, Park takes on Cho-OU, closing out the season with a circle of 4 8,000ers. The mountains, accustomed to long sieges, surrender one after another to his assault. By the end of '98, he adds a 5th trophy to his collection, Manaslu. His aggressive style, the power and speed with which he moves vertically, is staggering. The press and his peers no longer see him as just another climber. For this relentless, almost animalistic energy and grip, they christen him the Tiger of the Mountains. By the year 2000, Park Young-seok has conquered the most technically difficult challenges, Kangchenjunga and Makalu. He's ticking peaks off the list with frightening efficiency, as if he's following a train schedule, not battling the elements. But one void remains in his collection, and it has the shape of a perfect, icy pyramid, K2, the mountain that climbers respectfully and fearfully call the Savage Mountain for its absolute ruthlessness. In the summer of 2001, the expedition arrives in the Karakoram. This is no longer a routine climb. It's the finale of a grand saga, watched by all of South Korea. The tension in base camp is incredibly high. K2 has no patience for arrogance. Its slopes are relentlessly steep, offering no respite, and the weather can trap a team in a whiteout faster than you can zip up your jacket. Park understands that everything is on the line: his reputation, years of hard work, and the hopes of a nation. He looks at the black triangle of the summit and sees the finish line of his marathon. On July 22nd, the group begins the final push. Park tackles the infamous bottleneck, a narrow, deadly couloir beneath an overhanging wall of ice. There's no room for doubt here, only ice-cold concentration. Every strike of his crampons into the hard fern brings the endgame closer. And then, the slope finally levels out. There's nowhere left to go up. Park Young-seok stands on the summit of K2 at an altitude of 8,611 meters. In that moment, the radio crackles with news of his victory. Park becomes the first Korean to complete the Himalayan crown. All 14 of the planet's giants are now at his feet. But what stuns the world isn't just the achievement itself, but the raw numbers on the clock. Remember, he started this journey by mortgaging his house back in '93 and finished with this triumph in July of 2001. 8 years and 2 months, a phenomenal result for that era. Park blazes across the roof of the world with the speed of a hurricane. Now he stands at the peak of his fame, an absolute champion, gazing beyond the horizon. But there's no rest in the tiger's eyes. The outlines of a new, even grander and more dangerous dream are already beginning to form. By the way, the house was no longer mortgaged, and for the first time in years, Park's family could live peacefully, with a sense of security about their future. Imagine someone who's just run the longest marathon in the world, catches their breath for a couple of minutes, and immediately asks, "Where's the start of the next race?" For most, climbing the 14 8,000ers is a career finale, a reason to write a memoir. But Park Young-seok looks at a globe and sees the blank spots he hasn't yet set foot on. The Himalayas are starting to feel too small for him. The vertical world has been conquered, so he changes his vector. Now, his goal is the horizontal. Park sets his sights on a challenge of astronomical difficulty, the Explorer's Grand Slam. To complete this quest, he needs to add the highest peaks of all 7 continents and ski to both of the Earth's poles to his list of conquered giants. He wants to become a man who can survive in any conditions. First, as if it were child's play, he knocks out the 7 Summits Challenge. Denali in Alaska with its polar cold, Vinson Massif in Antarctica, Elbrus in Europe. He ticks off these peaks swiftly, as if it were a training run. But the real test awaits him down below, on the planet's ice caps. Here, in the polar latitudes, the rules of the game change completely. Instead of thin air, there's piercing cold, and an endless white silence. Here, you're not climbing up, you're hauling a sled that weighs 100 kilograms. It's the kind of punishing work that breaks your back, only at 40 below zero. In the 2004 season, Park heads to Antarctica. He journeys to the South Pole, unsupported, no resupplies, no outside help. For 44 days, he battles sastrugi, sharp, icy ridges, and wind that knocks him off his feet. Every step is a struggle. His body is running on reserves that shouldn't even exist anymore, and he makes it, but one final push remains: the North Pole. April 2005. The Arctic greets him with drifting ice and open water, forcing him to make crossings where he risks sinking to the bottom, along with all his gear. It's a race for survival across shifting ice floes, where the landscape changes by the minute. On April 30th, Park reaches the point where all meridians converge. In that moment, he rewrites history. Park Young-seok becomes the first person on the planet to complete the full set, the 14 8,000ers, the 7 summits, and both poles. Representatives from the Guinness Book of World Records make it official. He is the world's first person to achieve the true explorer's grand slam. What seemed physically impossible for one person to do was done. He proved that for him, there are no limits, not in the sky, not on the earth. Now he has it all, an absolute world record and legendary status. It would seem like the perfect moment to stop, but it's precisely at the peak of his fame that Park realizes a quiet life is more terrifying to him than any avalanche. In 2006, Park makes a decision that completely changes the trajectory of his life. He gives up the race for quantity and turns his focus to quality. His new goal is pure alpinism. This means going where no one has gone before, forging new lines on the planet's most formidable walls. A grand and daunting project is born in his mind, the 3 Great Walls. He wants to open new Korean routes on the south faces of Everest, Lhotse, and Annapurna. This is no longer just a sport. It's the higher mathematics of mountaineering, where any mistake in the equation leads to a fatal outcome. But for a task like this, one tiger isn't enough. He needs a pack. Seasoned veterans, accustomed to comfort and bottled oxygen, won't cut it. Park is looking for those with the same crazed fire in their eyes that he had in his youth. He starts building a new team and finds 2 young men whose names will soon become inseparable from his own, Lee Hyung-jo and Oh Hee-jun. They are young, strong, and look at Park as if he were a god. A chemistry sparks between them, the kind that's rare even among family. Park takes them under his wing, like an older brother. He sees his own reflection in them. During training and on expeditions, he passes on not just his technical skills, but his philosophy, his wildness. He teaches them to read the ice, to listen to the wind, and most importantly, to never back down where others give up. They become an extension of his will, his hands and feet on the vertical. They train together, eat together, plan the assault together. This trio transforms into a single organism, ready to challenge the most impregnable fortresses of the Himalayas. Now, Park feels he is ready for the greatest battle of his life, because behind him stand men he trusts more than he trusts himself. The spring of 2007, on the southwest face of Everest, begins as a triumph of will and technique. Park's team works like a well-oiled machine, biting into one of the most difficult faces on the planet. They aren't here to repeat someone else's path, but to draw their own. The work is relentless. Fixed ropes are already in place up to 8,000 meters. It seems that the wall, once so intimidating in its inaccessibility, is beginning to yield. There's an intoxicating sense of imminent victory in the air, but the Himalayas know how to wait. May 14th becomes the day that luck turns its back on the expedition. At 7,700 meters, the summit assault camp is established. Inside are the 2 young men Park considers not just his teammates, but part of his family, Lee Hyung-jo and Oh Hee-jun. They are preparing for the final push, checking their gear and waiting for morning. But instead of dawn, darkness falls. A massive slab of snow and ice breaks loose from the upper sections of the face. The camp, the tents, the men, everything vanishes in an instant, buried under tons of compacted snow. Park Young-seok, positioned further down, understands that the unthinkable has happened. He hasn't just lost his climbing partners. He's lost the brothers he himself led into this death zone. The search yields no miracle. The mountain has claimed them. For the tiger, a man used to looking danger in the eye and winning, this blow is devastating. His legendary armor of fearlessness cracks. His colleagues see the change in his eyes. The predatory gleam is gone, replaced by a heavy, leaden grief. For the first time in years, Park feels a real, clinging fear. But it's not fear for his own life. It's the horror of his responsibility for the lives of others. He temporarily loses his ability to take risks. His famous intuition falls silent, muffled by guilt. Many people would break in this situation, leaving mountaineering forever, unable to even look at snow again. Park is close to that point himself, but the grief that's burning him from the inside out slowly transforms into something else. He realizes he doesn't have the right to abandon the cause for which his friends died. Now he must return and finish this journey, so that their sacrifice will not have been in vain. In 2008, he throws himself at the wall again. He fights his way through snow and ice, reaching the ridge at 8,200 meters. But there he's met by a wall of hurricane-force winds. It's as if the elements are mocking him, slamming the door right in his face. Park is forced to retreat, gritting his teeth in frustration. But his eyes don't show defeat. They hold a cold promise to return. May 2009, the third attempt. The atmosphere in base camp is electric with tension. Everyone understands. There is no more room for error. Park leads his trusted guard, Shin Dong-min, Kang Ki-seok, and Jin Jan-chan. They set out onto the face as if for their final battle. This time, they use oxygen, because the difficulty of the route is beyond human limits. An exhausting, endless assault begins. 15 hours of non-stop work on the vertical face. They climb over black rock and hard fern, belaying one another, moving as a single organism. Time itself seems to stretch, becoming a viscous substance. Legs are screaming. The cold seeps under their down jackets, but Park doesn't let the pace drop. He knows that to stop now means the end. And then, on May 20th, the wall ends. They emerge onto the summit. Park Young-seok, Shin, Kang, and Jin are standing where no one has stood before. A new line appears on the map of Everest, the Park Route. It is the first ever new Korean route on the world's highest mountain. The global community erupts in applause. The prestigious portal, Explorer's Web, awards the expedition a top honor, calling it the best of the season. But for Park, these trophies and headlines are secondary. He has fulfilled his promise. A monument to his fallen friends is now carved into the eternal ice of the planet's highest peak. In 2010, Park Young-seok descends from the heavens back to Earth, only to find himself in the eye of a hurricane, one raging not in the mountains, but in boardrooms and on the pages of newspapers. All of South Korea is celebrating. Their very own Oh Sun has just announced that she's become the first woman in history to summit all 14 of the world's giant peaks. National pride skyrockets. Television networks prepare their tributes. But in the global climbing community, a heavy silence hangs in the air. Her Spanish rival, Edurne Pasaban, publicly questions the legitimacy of one of the Korean climbers' ascents on Kang. The situation is reaching a boiling point. Park Young-seok, the country's most respected climber and a living legend, is invited to join a special commission of the Korean Alpine Federation. He's expected to defend the nation's honor. All he has to do is stay silent, or just nod, to keep the party going for millions. But Park looks at the summit photographs with a completely different eye. He analyzes the pictures and reports with the surgical precision of a true professional. His verdict lands like a bombshell. The Kang ascent is invalid. He states that Oh Sun never reached the true summit. The decision sends shockwaves. Park has single-handedly destroyed his compatriot's world record, putting an end to a massive PR campaign. Many don't understand him, accusing him of lacking patriotism. But for the Tiger, truth matters more than applause. He declares that in the mountains, absolute honesty is paramount. Otherwise, all the risk becomes meaningless. Park demonstrates that his standards are just as brutal for his own people as they are for anyone else. This uncompromising nature becomes his guiding principle. Now, with a clear conscience and his principles reaffirmed, he is ready to apply these same ruthless demands to his next and final project. Park returns to the element that tolerates no deceit. His gaze is now fixed on the south face of Annapurna. This is a place that doesn't forgive even a moment of complacency. The wall is so steep and treacherous that avalanches sweep down with the regularity of subway trains. But for Park, it's no longer enough to just tick a box by reaching the summit. He needs to do it flawlessly. He raises the stakes as high as they can possibly go, choosing a tactic that leaves many professionals breathless. He flatly refuses oxygen masks, which dull the senses and ease the suffering in the thin air. He refuses the help of Sherpas, who typically carry heavy loads and break the trail. This is pure, unadulterated alpine style. In the autumn of 2010, Park and his team begin their audacious assault. They work their way up the face, battling through gale-force winds and biting cold, reaching an altitude of 7,000 meters. The summit is just a stone's throw away, but then Annapurna shows its true colors. The The weather turns in an instant, transforming the slope into an icy trap with zero visibility. Park, with his immense intuition, understands. One more step up and no one is coming back. He makes the difficult but wise decision to turn around. But this retreat doesn't feel like a defeat. As he descends, he glances back at the wall and makes a firm promise. He will be back to finish the job. Park is fully aware that he's playing with fire. He candidly admits that with age, his physical strength isn't what it used to be, and the mathematical probability of dying grows with every new expedition. In one interview, he utters a phrase that would become his testament. "I will explore and climb my entire life." He knows that a tiger, accustomed to the wild hunt, can't live in the safe cage of city life. Risk has become his natural habitat, and he's ready to pay whatever price the mountain demands. Park Young-seok decides to repeat the ascent in the autumn of 2011. He stands once again at the foot of Annapurna's south face. Park assembles his summit team. Only 2 other people are roped to him. They aren't hired guides, but his climbing sons, 33-year-old Shin and 32-year-old Kang Ki-seok. They are young, strong, and devoted to their captain. Not long ago, they were with him on Everest. Now, they must conquer Annapurna. The plan Park devises borders on madness. It involves a non-stop ascent up the vertical face of the mountain. It's worth remembering that by 2011, Annapurna is considered the deadliest mountain in the world. It's estimated that around 30% of climbers who attempt the summit never return. With stats like that, even in a team of 3, at least one person isn't coming back. The ascent of the vertical face is planned to take 6, maybe 10 days at most. No intermediate camps, no oxygen supplies, no Sherpas who could provide a safety net or help with a descent in an emergency. Their packs are light. Every single gram counts, because at that altitude, extra weight is a heavy burden and dramatically increases the risks. They take only the bare essentials. Park, who had shown caution and turned back just a year earlier, is now resolute. He looks at the wall towering kilometers above him and utters a phrase that now sounds like a sentence. He declares that he will not turn back halfway, as he did last time. For him, this is a matter of honor, an attempt to find the closure that's been haunting him for a year. In early October, the group leaves the relative safety of base camp. They step onto the glacier, and their connection to the outside world grows thinner with every step. For several days, the team moves upward like ghosts, clawing back meter after meter from the vertical wall. They break into the 7,000-meter zone, the threshold where the air becomes empty. But here, instead of a triumphant final push, a closing trap awaits them. The weather, which had held for their start, collapses in an instant. A heavy snowfall begins, erasing all landmarks, but the cold isn't even their main enemy. The mountain itself begins to crumble, unleashing a massive rockfall. October 18th, 1600 hours. The radio in base camp crackles to life, and through the static, the captain's voice breaks through. They are at an altitude of 6,400 meters. His tone is composed, precise, but in the background, you can hear the howl of the wind and the rumble of falling rock. Park reports the situation. A rockfall has started. To continue climbing up would mean facing it with almost no chance of survival. He makes the hardest decision of his career, to turn back. Remember his promise not to retreat? He's breaking it now, because on the other side of the scale are the lives of his partners, Shin and Kang. He lost a team once before. He doesn't want to go through that again. All 3 begin an emergency evacuation. But the way down proves to be more treacherous than the ascent. The terrain on Annapurna changes with frightening speed. Where there was a solid ice bridge yesterday, a black void now gapes. The radio connection becomes intermittent, sentences cut off mid-word. And then, through the noise, comes Park's final, strange question, addressed either to his companions or to the mountain itself. How do we cross this? Those words hang in the air, a heavy omen. They have clearly hit an unexpected obstacle, perhaps a giant crevasse that has cut off their path, or a section swept away by an avalanche. That phrase becomes the final note. After that, the radio falls silent. Base camp calls for the tiger, calls for Shin, but the only reply is the indifferent hiss of static. The mountain has slammed the door shut. After that last broken question about the crossing, Park's frequency dies for good. In base camp, people sit around the receiver as if it were a campfire, but the airwaves offer only the cold, indifferent hiss of static. No one dares to turn the station off, not even for a second, afraid of missing a faint click or a breath. Observers, their eyes glued to their binoculars, witness a terrifying scene. Just after 1600 hours, when the connection was lost, the south face begins to breathe. Masses of snow break loose from the upper tiers, hidden in the clouds. These aren't just small slides. They are powerful avalanches that reshape the white canvas of the route, erasing any trace of human presence. The first 24 hours pass. October 19th drags on endlessly. The sun rises and sets, painting the peaks in shades of pink. But for the team below, this landscape has lost its beauty, becoming the backdrop to a tragedy. There's no news. The silence becomes thick, heavy. Everyone understands what silence means in light and fast style. Park's team has no down sleeping bags for extreme bivouacs in their packs, no extra fuel to melt snow and stay warm. Their entire strategy was built on speed and constant movement. For them, stopping is a death sentence. Without active muscle work, the body cools at an alarming rate in such cold. By the morning of October 20th, the fragile hope that it was just a technical glitch or a dead battery shatters into dust. A code red alert is officially declared in the camp. The Korean Alpine Federation organizes a rescue operation. The search begins. Helicopters take to the air, and Sherpas prepare their gear to enter the danger zone. The atmosphere changes instantly. Waiting gives way to a flurry of urgent activity. The rescuers know the mountain already has a nearly 2-day head start, and the chances of finding anyone alive are melting away with each passing hour. But the search continues until every section of the wall has been checked. The roar of helicopter blades cuts through the thin air, but the mountain responds with an icy silence. The pilots fly their machines right up to the south face, risking their rotors on the cliffs. They peer into the white chaos below, trying to spot a tiny speck, a colored jacket, a tent, any movement. But Annapurna looks hauntingly clean. The fresh snow that has fallen over the past few days has acted as a perfect camouflage, hiding all traces of human presence. The hope of finding them alive from the air is crushed by the scale of the devastation. The pilots see only giant avalanche debris cones that have plowed through the slope like bulldozers, obliterating all features of the terrain. While the aircraft scour the skies, on the ground, its own quiet act of heroism unfolds. A team of elite Sherpa rescuers, the best of the best, sets out on foot. They are climbing straight into the jaws of danger, ascending to an altitude of 5,200 meters. Every step here is a gamble with fate, because the wall continues to shed rock and ice, threatening to bury the rescuers as well. These men know they're no longer searching for survivors. They're looking for bodies. But a mountaineer's code compels them to try and bring their fallen comrades home. And then, out in that endless expanse of white, they find the one, chilling piece of evidence. It's not a backpack or a radio. It's the tattered end of a rope, frozen solid into the compacted snow at the base of the wall. This discovery allows them to piece together what happened in those final moments. The experts realize the rope leads deep down, into a part of the glacier fractured by massive crevasses. All the signs point to one thing, a massive avalanche, which must have hit shortly after their last radio call, swept the entire team right off the face of the mountain, as if they were nothing more than dust. The immense weight of the snow threw them to the base of the mountain and buried them in one of the bottomless icy chasms. On October 28th, the drama reaches its heartbreaking conclusion. The operations leaders look at the weather forecasts and at their exhausted rescuers, who are themselves teetering on the edge of disaster. To continue the search in these conditions would be to knowingly send more people to their certain deaths. The call is made, and a heavy silence falls over base camp. The search is officially over. The rescue teams pack up their camp and head back down, leaving the south face in peace. On that day, the official records state a single, stark line. Park Young-seok, Shin Dong-min, and Kang Ki-seok are presumed dead. The legendary Tiger and his loyal team are now on their final, eternal expedition. But for those waiting back home, the official end of the search doesn't mean the end of the story. The reports are signed, the rescuers have gone home, but Park's family is left in an agonizing limbo. They have no body, no grave where they can lay flowers, just an emptiness and a set of coordinates on a map. 5 years of silence go by. Then, in 2016, the legendary climber's son decides to fill that void. His name is Park Young-seok. He's 22 years old, and he grew up in the shadow of the great tiger. Now, he feels he has a duty to look the mountain that took his father in the eye. This is not an easy decision. Song-min is not a professional climber. He's just a regular guy who has to undergo special training simply to make it to base camp. In August, he arrives in Nepal. He stands at the foot of Annapurna's south face, cranes his neck, and sees the very same giant wall of white. With a small support group, Song-min scours the accessible sections of the glacier. He's looking for any sign, any hint, a bright scrap of clothing, a piece of gear, anything that might have melted out of the ice over the years. But the mountain guards its secrets with a terrifying indifference. The expedition finds nothing. Annapurna has tucked the tiger and his team safely away, under millions of tons of ice, as if determined to keep them for herself. You'd think this would break the young man's heart, but the opposite happens. Standing there, amidst the eternal snows, Song-min finds a strange yet profound sense of peace. He understands that his father was left in the one place where he was truly happy. With a wisdom beyond his years, the son says the words that bring an emotional end to this saga. I'm not disappointed that we didn't find anything, because he loved Annapurna. He accepts his father's choice. His mother, the widow Hong Gyung-hui, supports him. This incredibly strong woman admits that her whole life, whenever she saw her husband off on an expedition, she believed he would return. But deep down, she always knew that one day the mountain might win. She doesn't blame the elements or look for someone to point a finger at. The family understands that for a man like Park Young-seok, a quiet old age and a warm bed would have been unnatural, almost a betrayal of his very soul. He left the world the way he lived in it, at the absolute limit, chasing a magnificent dream, dissolving into the very eternity he so passionately sought to conquer. While Annapurna covers the last traces of the climbers with fresh snow, Seoul is plunged into mourning. On November 4, 2011, the capital comes to a standstill to say goodbye to its hero. A hall at Korea University Hospital is overflowing with white chrysanthemums, but the atmosphere is thick with a sense of the surreal. It's a funeral without a body. A symbolic farewell for those who found their final resting place above the clouds. People come in an endless stream, more than 4,000 people, from high-ranking officials to ordinary schoolchildren, approach the altar to bow before the portrait of a smiling captain. This isn't just the funeral of a famous athlete, it's a farewell to a symbol of the national will. Korea understands it has lost a man who proved, year after year, that the human spirit knows no limits. But the memory of Park isn't frozen in granite tombstones, it lives on through action. 8 years later, in 2019, the Park Young-seok Climbing Center opens its doors in Seoul. This building is no quiet mausoleum. Here, you can hear the clinking of carabiners and the voices of young people scaling the climbing walls. Park dreamed of raising a new generation of explorers, and this center is the embodiment of that dream. He continues to teach, even in his absence. His philosophy of the wild tiger, who loses its essence in a cage of safety, has moved from interviews to the pages of school textbooks. He has become a national symbol of courage, a reminder that a life isn't measured in years, but in the intensity with which it's lived. Park Young-seok went out exactly as he lived, on a high note, without looking back and without compromising on his dream. He didn't vanish into nothingness. He became a part of the world he loved most. Now, his name is forever tied to the wind, the snow, and the eternal cold of the high altitudes. He remains there forever, on that great Himalayan wall, an eternal sentinel, a pioneer who simply embarked on one last, long expedition, leaving behind a map of his incredible journey for all of us to follow.